Good afternoon, colleagues, peers, and mentors alike. Welcome to my webinar presentation on Behavioral Analysis Redefined. I look forward to any questions, comments, concerns, and/or collaborations following this presentation. Society has developed greatly over time, which affects how people must operate in their day-to-day lives. Everything has always been based on survival, and in the primitive days, this looked far simpler. But as social constructs become more and more complex, so do the elements of survival in the current climate. These social constructs and heuristic implications can very well impact what will be considered instinctual to each person, which then impacts behavior. The goal of the final project is to evaluate the current respective theories used in behavioral analysis today and explore just how social cognitive theory and heuristics theory can individualize behavioral theory's application toward an individual. While working with adolescents and implementing the behavior plans, it's hard to ignore the unacknowledged skill applied by behavioral analysts as they collect data to formulate the behavior intervention plan. Oftentimes, they are using considerations from other perspectives of personality to create the most effective plan for the client. But these perspectives often work against each other in professional respect. Learning objectives. Behavior analysis, the personality theory. Classical conditioning theory. Operant conditioning theory. Social cognitive implications. Heuristic implications. Why bridge the gap? How to integrate social cognitive heuristics into the behavioral health field. Conclusions and references. John B. Watson was the beginning of the idea that our personality is formed and developed over time in accordance with our environment. In the very same breath, he also stressed that experience from environmental situations could very well override genetic predispositions. This indirectly suggests that one could correct non-preferred genetic predispositions by altering the surrounding environment to influence positive and negative experiences to contribute to a change in personality and behavior. Watson's theories are not only responsible for developing this idea, but he single-handedly made this realm of psychology far more concrete by suggesting a more scientific approach, by making the concepts measurable and objective, bringing value to the definitions of behavior. From that stemmed the three perspectives of behavioralism. Three perspectives of behaviorism. A view that is openly critical of behaviorism and requires contribution from other aspects of the whole mind. So that will be the first view. It's very open. The second view is methodological behaviorism. The third view is radical behaviorism. Pavlov is the theorist that formulated the idea of classical conditioning. This idea seeks to take a natural behavior or instinctual behavior and attach it to an assigned discriminative stimulus according to what the trainer, teacher, or behavioralist assigns. Ivan M. Sekhanov, Ivan Pavlov, and Vladimir M. Bekhterev made a research team dedicated to behavioral analysis. Ivan Pavlov is the most recognizable of the names because of his widely known experiment with conditioning a dog to instinctually salivate to the sound of a bell after teaching it to know that food was to follow. But his colleagues both contributed to the multiple definitions and interpretations of operational conditioning results. Sosa and Ramirez discussed how B.F. Skinner was the first passionate professional to serve as a skeptic regarding classical conditioning because it seemingly left out the possibility that the absence of a stimulus could alter one's behavior. They discussed how many other professionals in the field critiqued the data collection methods, suggesting that the theory's claims were misconstrued with some definitions of neurophysiology. B.F. Skinner was inspired both by John B. Watson and Bertrand Russell when learning about behavior theory. He is most famously known for teaching rats to utilize a lever to receive food, and his relentless curiosities brought about operant conditioning while he was studying at Harvard. Skinner developed operant conditioning, which seeks to use different levels of reinforcement to encourage the desired behavior as determined by the trainer, teacher, or behaviorist. Staten, 2021, took a great liking to Skinner's ideals while explaining what angle Travis Thompson came from, while conducting his own literature review or paperwork. He has explained that there was no other professional that could conjure up such a profound idea and turn it into a masterpiece that could change history, complementing Skinner's ability to innovate and experiment in a confident manner that could translate to human beings. Additional theoretical implications that could very well improve the field of ABA are social cognitive theory and heuristics theory. Since instinctual survival has turned into a race through social constructs, the social factors affecting behavior must be considered. Doing so may modernize today's behavior treatment plans. There is a study that addresses what social cognitive theory is and how it may impact physical behavior in individuals with different activity levels. 6 adults varying ages from 29 to 65 were given activity parameters to follow for 4 weeks to allow for a measurement to be completed, capturing various data points that could either encourage or discourage further physical activity. The result did show a positive relationship between the social cognitive construct and the level of physical activity, but the data collected proved to be extremely complex across the 6 subjects. It showed that the reasonings were so different across the board, and that it was far too factor dependent to be able to categorize any one subject together. This concept that was briefly explored here supports my curiosity that social constructs and heuristics could potentially influence how our behavior must be manipulated to impose the greatest level of positive change or outcomes. Knowing one's self-discovery or mental game plan can drastically impact how to treat someone's behavior. Rutar, 2009, has successfully identified that one's behavior is heavily influenced by social constructs, and those social constructs are then heavily influenced by one's end goal, which then suggests a heuristic element to these behaviors. This article that I will discuss just deconstructs rational choice theory and reconstructs what the author believes to be the most useful parts to formulate a new and improved version of the theory. Back to Rutar, successfully identified these implications that I am seeking to discuss. Although this is a more sociological concept, it can be used to inspire a more psychological ideal to how the personality is developed and how the human mind may be working. Our instincts are based on survival, which is why animals are an easy comparison when performing these studies. But now that we as humans have reached a far larger need for social survival, one could argue that this may be driving most people's intuition when navigating their life and adjusting aspects of their own being. So why bridge the gap? We want to seek to modernize and make more efficient the approach to treating behavior. If what we know to be true currently is only based off of our instinctual need to survive, instead of the modernized complexities of our social constructs, which don't necessarily determine the success or failure in essence of survival. then we must pay attention as best as we can to the ever-changing complexities of those very social constructs and figure out a way to apply them to our process of changing behavior. And that is what we will be looking at in the future slides. How to integrate social cognitive heuristics into the behavioral health field. First, we must take into consideration social constructs and/or heuristics before writing a behavior treatment plan. In order to understand what reinforcers or punishments to utilize regarding behavior momentum, both theories could help one understand which methods work better and which do not. When evaluating someone's morals and values, it can drastically determine how successful one's treatments can be. How do we do this? The idea is to utilize a survey that both the client or person seeking out the behavior treatment and then a bystander or caregiver point of view. So that's 2 surveys, one to the client, one to the caregiver. However, I do want to acknowledge that there are many instances where the client is unable to file a survey for personal reasons, medical reasons, whatever condition they may have, and maybe even the caregiver is not well educated on the status of the client. This can happen for various reasons, which aren't necessarily important here. However, there can be a survey developed from a BCBA point of view. That way, they can use their skills and experience to do their due diligence to evaluate the client from that standpoint. Now that the primitive era for humans has shifted from a concern of daily living to a concern of social hierarchy, social cognitive and heuristic implications must be identified to accommodate current climates in this field of behavioral therapy. In order to do this, the origins of behaviorism must be explored, along with the conditioning theories that are applied still to this day. Only then can one truly see what potential impacts social constructs and forethought competency can have on how one approaches behaviors in a habitual and subconscious manner. Not only will this presentation greatly explain behaviorism or behavior analysis, but it will go one step further in hopes of broadening the scope of treatment in the future. All right, and now I will give a few seconds to review references that were built or that were used to build the slideshow. There's about 2 pages of them, so take your time. Now, I do appreciate everyone's time and look forward to hearing what you have to say about the information presented. Thank you so much. And as said in the very beginning of this webinar presentation, I look forward to any questions, comments, concerns, and or collaborations following this presentation. My name is Daisy Clark. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful night.